This is Brother Ron, and welcome to We All Be News Radio and TV, the news-free Dixie for the 21st century.
To live and die in L.A. is the place to be. You got to be there to know it when everybody wanna see. Good day, boys and girls, scholars and laymen. Welcome to another wonderful, edutaining, infotaining edition of The Artivist Thinks Thought Provocateur. I'm your host for the empowerment segment, Brother Ron, also known as R2C2H2, the Artivist. And this is the We All Be News-Free Dixie for the 21st Century Zone. And I'm just going to give some quick thoughts, hopefully it'll be no longer than an hour, about the situation, the unfortunate situation out on the West Coast. Everybody has heard, it's been the number one trending topic in social media about the untimely and tragic death of the brother known as Nipsey Hussle, the hip-hop rap legend now known as Nipsey Hussle, who was killed in front of his business, Marathon Clothing Store, on Sunday, March 31st, 2019, at the age of 33. That's the Christ age. That's how old Christ was. The one they call Jesus Christ was when he was crucified. He was 33 years old. So, we lost, it's like a real good brother. I didn't really keep up with his music while he was alive. I was definitely aware of who he was. And I found out he got recently nominated for his first, official studio album on a label. He was Grammy nominated. We know Cardi B won that, but it's like he was very loved in his community. He was so beloved and so respected. And I think people respected him more. I mean, it's like he was a pretty good artist. I mean, I listened to some of his stuff recently. It got catchy stuff. He had talent, But the thing about it was, he was about the people. He was about giving back and building up and creating wealth, not only for himself, but for his community. And it's unfortunate that his brother was cut down right when things was getting off the ground for him. And when I thought about him passing, I thought about him when he was saying for the last year or so that he was working on a documentary about the true story of Dr. Sebi, the brother from Honduras, who we lost under questionable circumstances a couple years ago. I know y'all are aware Dr. Sebi, he was the guru for Left Eye Lopez, as well as Michael Jackson and some other well-known and beloved black celebrities who are no longer with us. But also, Nipsey took some of the product from Dr. Sebi, took some of his nutritional products, and he said he benefited from it. He never met the man in person, but knew of his family because of his dealings with getting Dr. Sebi products. So he wanted to do a documentary to talk about that time he, won in court about him claiming that he could cure AIDS and cancer. So he made the rounds on different radio and social media platforms talking about his desire to do a Dr. Sebi documentary. And he even joked about, I guess he was joking, and dark sense of humor about him being possibly taken out for trying to do the Dr. Sebi documentary. So he was telling people, y'all need to ride for me. If something happened to me, ride for me. And that's something we need to do. I mean, when I heard him say that, I'm thinking about Dr. John Henry Clark, our esteemed ancestor, righteous ancestor, preeminent historian, when he talked about how black folks got to do what we got to do in the documentary about his life that was produced by Wesley Snipes. He said you got to bury the man and continue to plan. But I think we don't have a plan. But it's like Nipsey had a blueprint, and he was willing to share that with people in his interviews. So he was not just about entertaining you. He was about trying to revolutionize and empower the young black minds to catch their imagination. And it's very unfortunate. The brother, it's like he was a good brother. And condolences to his soulmate sister, the beautiful sister Laura London, and his children who got to grow up without the love of a father. You know, it is a damn shame as we as black people, it's like we are in a constant traumatic phase of living. We always got to watch our backs. We're always paranoid, it seems, looking over our shoulder. Can't relax at all, even when we're at the top of our industries, respective industries, or can't even enjoy the fruits of your labor because people might be hating on you, jealous, envy, want to do harm to you and your loved ones. So you can't even enjoy what you work for. And Nipsey was a cat. Not only did he work hard for what he got, you know, he hustled on a come up. He had a vision, but he also wanted to bring his people with him as well too. But this is not uncommon. But I know people becoming up. You know, people want to discredit people by calling people conspiracy theorists. But how can you trust a government that was not meant for your empowerment to begin with? How can you trust any of this stuff? No, big pharma is real, y'all. The pharmaceutical industry is a real thing. I mean, these are people are in power. People don't understand because we don't study history like we should as a people about how these things would move. He's, you know, what Biggie says it. Don't you know that bad boys move in silence and violence? Okay, that's the American government. What Dr. King said over 50 years ago. He said, "The greatest purveyor of violence is my own government." It was proven in the court of law December 8th, 1999, in their court of law, U.S. Civil Court in Memphis, Tennessee, that the U.S. government was complicit in the assassination of Dr. King. Dr. King called a meeting back in August of 1966. I got this on tape of Reverend Albert Sampson, who was Dr. King's housing director for the SCLC. He also was ordained by Dr. King. He said that Dr. King called a meeting of his top lieutenants in the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, the SCLC, back in August of 66. He told them that he was told by a black FBI agent that he would be assassinated by the government. And 2 years later, he was dead. In under 2 years, he was dead, right? So Dr. King knew he was a marked man by the government, not by the postman. I know you people, well, you mean the government running me the postman? You mean, what you talking about? No, I'm talking about there's a government that we know, and then there's a shadow government. There's people been in power for decades without the power to vote. You see what I'm saying? They don't need your vote to have power. They've been there in the shadows, lurking. So that's what I'm saying. So we got to get hip to this game. And I guess what I'm going to do, because it's like people know who they looking for now. The suspect, supposedly, his name is, they released on news of all people, his name is Eric Holder. You know, I'm like, Eric Holder? You mean Obama's former U.S. Attorney General, Eric Holder? No, not him. Okay. So what I'm saying is, when people say about, well, they don't believe in all this stuff, don't you know that social media is psyop? The social media experiment is just that, an experiment. It's psyop. You know, they programming us. Social media is the new TV. You understand what I'm saying? I don't look at traditional news. I don't even look at my TV. I get a lot of my news from social media. When people inbox me, when I look on people's timelines, whether it be Facebook, looking at Twitter, Instagram, that's the new word of mouth. It's technology. It amplifies word of mouth. So that's how I get my news. And what I do also is that I love history. I love researching. I love talking to my elders. So a lot of times you look at things happen in cycles like seasons, right? So what I do is I look at what's going on right now, but also I compare it to things that happened in the past. I compare and contrast what's happening now to what happened in the past. And, and that's how I come on my narrative. Those are my special prescription for my magic glasses. I know a lot of y'all saying, well, we would be love to see what Dick Gregory would say about this. But you don't have to, have Dick Gregory around. He is around. He's everywhere. He's omnipresent. He knew the value of technology. He used it to amplify his message. So if you actually are a student of Dick Gregory, if you were part of the so-called Dick Gregory Society for Free Thinkers and Thought Provocateurs, as I call it, you could, create your own critical analysis based on, no, let me just think about this. Because like I like to do, I'm not going to, like they say, fools rush in. I didn't want to give my commentary on the Nipsey Hussle thing. At first, I just want to see what other people are saying. And then I do my research and I come to my own conclusions. And I just want y'all to start thinking bigger than what y'all can think about these things. Just don't always trust your first reaction to something. No, I ain't saying not trust yourself, but be willing to go there, to go to the extremes, right? Be willing to heighten contradictions, right? Just, like they do news, how it's breaking news, but like when they break the news, a lot of times it's not about getting things accurate. It's about being the first to report it. So once they break the news, they find out more details. They got to come in, correct, quote unquote, correct the narrative, right? So my thing, what I love about social media is that we, the people, are breaking the news, but also we're having a way to control our narrative. Because I believe a lot of the information I got about the Nipsey Hustle thing is from social media. It's for people being there on the scene, Instagram live and Facebook live and using their platforms to voice their opinions, to interview people in the neighborhood, so you get a better understanding about what's going on. Versus like you had, back in the day, you had to depend on these three networks that were the gatekeepers of the information. But like I tell you people all the time, what I tell people is knowledge is the currency of the universe. And like Dick Gregory said, information is power. Good information is good power. Bad information is bad power. But with that said, let me get into some quick thoughts about Nipsey Hussle, and also to put out some examples from history that y'all can use and amplify. Because I am the feeder. I believe in feeding my people stuff you can use to empower yourself. Because like I said, knowledge is the currency of the universe, right? So we talk about Dr. CB. He trying to do the documentary, and Nick Cannon said he's going to pick up the pieces and finish what what brother Nipsey started. Let's say prayers, made the righteous ancestors protect brother Nick Cannon and give him the strength and the resources to make this a reality. Now Nick Cannon was also one of Baba's chosen. He was close to Baba Dick Gregory. Spent a lot of quality time with Baba Dick Gregory. So I'm sure he understands what he needs to do as a soldier in this cause. So let's hope, let's pray, keep him protected by the Most High as he complete this important task. But let me just share some of my thoughts. Then we're going into some examples from history. But please support the movement, y'all. If you have benefited from anything I have done, I want to thank everybody who had actually listened to my last thing about Jussie Smollett and Chicago PsyOp. I'm glad people got a lot of it. It inspires me. So I'm gonna keep on pushing for y'all, man, because it's good to know that people are receiving what I'm putting out there, and it makes me feel good that my life has some type of meaning. So this is what when I first heard about the news, I was shocked, man. I think my phone updated with Willie D Live. I have notification. I like to listen to Willie D. I mean, he's like our black CNN. That man be on. I don't know how he do it. He got all the energy. But he was doing like a YouTube live on Nipsey Russell. I said, Nipsey Hussle getting killed. I saw the K. I said, oh my God, hopefully it ain't what I thought it was. I mean, I was just like, man, I was shocked. Even though I was not a big fan of Nipsey, I knew of Nipsey and I respected him as an artist, as a human being, and somebody who cared. But this was my first status update on Sunday night around 9:15 p.m. Central. Big Pharma is the real mob. Rest in peace, brother Nipsey Hussle, who died a martyr's death at 33. Dr. CB's story will be told. And he looks the Christ-like part, man. I think they say he got a Ethiopian background, but he looks like a biblical figure, like a spiritual figure. I mean, that beard, he's a distinctive profile. You can tell he was very charismatic, and you listen to his interviews, you can tell he was a deep thinking brother. So that was my first thing I wrote on my status update on Facebook and Twitter. Big Pharma is the real mob. Rest in peace, brother Nipsey Hussle, who died a martyr's death at 33. Dr. CB's story will be told. So here's some other things. And also, when people say Tupac is overrated, Tupac is never overrated, y'all. Because every time, like I remember when X Tentacion died, we was comparing him to Pop. You know, this is generation's Tupac. They compared Nipsey to being Tupac. Tupac is the GOAT, man. I'm sorry, Tupac was the total package. And the folks who say it's Tupac overrated, they don't really listen to Pac's lyrics. You know, people say, well, Nas, he's a great lyricist, and Nas is a great rapper. He's one of my favorites. But he don't always pick the best beats for his lyrics. But with Tupac, even if you look at the weakest part of his catalog, it was still some good stuff. Tupac got hits for days. I mean, I can listen to Tupac all day. That's what I do a lot of times. Sometimes I just spend a whole day listening to Tupac driving around the city. It never gets old. Tupac was just a great artist, and he's bigger than hip hop. It's not just about hip hop with Tupac. He was bigger than hip hop. He's an icon. He's a cultural icon worldwide, period. Died at 25 years old. Man, imagine what Tupac could have done if he lived just to be 33 years old. You understand what I'm saying? That's the type of impact. And we didn't have social media back then when Pac was around. Anyway, it was interesting. I said, well, Tupac is never overrated, man. He is more dangerous now. Outlaw, immortal, for real. So they always compare, you have a rapper like Nipsey Hussle, they say he's bigger than hip hop, the things he was doing with buying the block, real estate, the businesses he owned, giving back in terms of developing the tech connect between the hood and Silicon Valley, investing in young folks' education. Pac was about that too. Listen to that phone conversation he had with the Crip legend Monster Cody. Pac was a big thinker. He was a dreamer. I mean, even what I'm thinking about, Prodigy, who passed away under suspicious circumstances in Las Vegas. He was a great fan of Pac, even though they were enemies. They had some beefs, but he said he found in one of Tupac notebooks, one of his homies' homes up in Queens, and he was just amazed by how deep of a thinker Pac was. I mean, it was bigger than hip hop. These guys were bigger than hip hop. But yeah, I always pair, everybody to Tupac, and people like he ain't the GOAT, he the GOAT. Then I thought about it. I said, how are we going to protect Nipsey Hussle when we as a people don't know or value our own worth, man? Think about it. We keep on saying we had to protect him. How are we going to protect him when we don't love ourselves? We don't know who we are. It's like Nipsey understood who he was and what he was about from an early age. Even though he was in that life, he understood or overstood from an early age that it was something more to this thing. It's kind of like Frederick Douglass knew he was more than just being somebody's slave, right? That's Nipsey Hussle. He was on that ancestor journey, on that righteous ancestor journey, and he was cut short. Imagine if he was able to live even to a ripe old age like a Frederick Douglass, what he could accomplish. You know what I'm saying? It's so deep like that. But then I brought up this too, because a lot of the time we don't know our history. When I thought what happened to Nipsey Russell, I keep calling his man Nipsey Hussle, excuse me. What happened to Nipsey the Great, right? I was thinking about what happened 50 years ago this year to Black Panther leader, legend, Apprentice Bunchy Carter, who was killed on a crowded UCLA campus during a Black Student Union meeting, January the 17th, 1969. Him and John Huggins, another Black Panther from Connecticut, who was just 23 years young. He was married to Sister Erica Huggins, had a little young daughter, right? So both of these black men who were Black Panthers were gunned down on UCLA campus at a Black Student Union meeting, allegedly by members of the US organization. That's Ron Karenga's organization. That's the guy who they credited with finding Kwanzaa. That was his organization. They say it was gunmen from that organization that killed Bunchy Carter and John Huggins at UCLA. And I believe it so traumatized the Black students that the Black Student Union did not meet again for almost several years, if not mistaken, after that incident. But a lot of people don't talk about that. That happened in 69, because at the end of the 69, you have the assassination, the state assassination of Fred Hampton Sr. while he was sleeping next to his pregnant fiancee in his West Side Chicago apartment. That's December 4th, 1969. But to start off 1969 with the death of Bunchy Carter and John Huggins at UCLA, That was a tough year for Black Power in 1969. But a lot of us don't talk about those deaths as we do like Fred Hampton Sr., which, by the way, they're making a movie about Fred Hampton's life. I'm looking forward to seeing how they're going to mess that up. But, it's Hollywood. But anyway, let me read what my thoughts about that. I said 50 years ago, January 17th, 1969, charismatic Black Panther leader, our apprentice Bunchy Carter, was gunned down at UCLA during a crowded Black student union meeting. He was a student and he was also only 26 years old. Before he became a Black Panther, Carter was once a legendary leader of the Slossons, a well-known LA Black street gang. He was known as the mayor of the ghetto because he was so respected and loved by the community. Gifted with a silver tongue, he was also a talented poet. According to the righteous ancestor, Geronimo Pratt, who was also Tupac's godfather, he was also handy with that knife play, man. Another Panther, John Huggins, 23, was also killed. Kwanzaa founder Ron Karanga's Us was blamed, but best believe it was gang related, meaning FBI and COINTELPRO involvement. Check out the church committee report to understand what I am talking about. When you can understand this history, then you can better understand why they killed Nipsey Hussle. See how it works somewhere. So that's what I wrote yesterday. Got a great response from the people. That's why I love this technology, man. I can put this information out to y'all, and y'all can just research all this. You don't have to take my word for it. Take a look. It's all online. Just giving y'all places to point. I'm pointing y'all where to go. Y'all said, tell me where to go. I'm telling y'all where to go. It's just information, man. So, like I told people, once again, what happened to Nipsey Hussle wasn't gang related. It was game related, man. We are all pawns in a game that many of us will never understand, let alone win somewhere. So we will know, how can you win a game you don't understand how to play it? You don't understand the rules of the game. You understand? It's a big game. Well, what Dick Gregory said, it's a game, it's a game, it's a game. Somewhere. And when you stop and think about it, it's a game. And also people say, well, how could they shoot Nipsey like that? It was military precision. Well, you got to be a really, really bad shot to be able to have to hit somebody point blank range. As we find out on the camera surveillance, the dude just walked up to Nipsey and started shooting at this brother. Shot him 6 times, including once in the head. Point blank range. Like some menace to society, grand theft auto type of stuff, right? So I also said, when you stop and think about it, sometimes the best way to kill a well-known figure is in crowded places and spaces with lots of witnesses, man. I gave examples of JFK, Malcolm X. JFK was killed during a parade route. Nightmare on Elm Street. He was killed on Elm Street. They shot his head off on Elm Street. Crowded, witnesses everywhere. Top of the day, middle of the day. RFK, right? Killed at the Ambassador Hotel in L.A. Dude was killed in L.A. in a crowded kitchen. Tupac, Las Vegas Strip, after a Tyson fight. Notorious B.I.G. Wilshire and Fairfax. At that intersection, that's busy, right? After there was a vibe party thrown by Quincy Jones at the Peterson Automotive Museum. I went there about a couple years ago. I stood on that intersection where they shot Biggie. And right across the street was Bernie Sanders' LA headquarters at this famous coffee shop that was the site of the movie Reservoir Dogs. They filmed the opening of Reservoir Dogs, Quentin Tarantino's classic, at that coffee shop. But it served as Bernie Sanders' campaign headquarters for LA back in 2016. Still had Bernie paraphernalia up there, or propaganda. So I call it the intersection of broken dreams, because there old Bernie Sanders, he lost his bid or it was stolen from him. He was robbed. Then B.I.G. was robbed of his life at the age of 24 at the intersection. And that museum has a facelift now. It don't look the same as it did back in 1997 on March 9th. look totally different in 2017 and today. But it's interesting. But all these places were crowded, a lot of traffic. Cause like I tell you, mass confusion plus mass chaos equals perfect getaway. Now you say, well, brother Ron, did they not catch people that were involved in JFK, Malcolm X, and RFK assassinations? They got some people, but a lot of people believe that people were patsies and pawns. Lee Harvey Oswald, nobody believed that, a lot of people don't believe he was the one that killed JFK. He even said himself he was a patsy, and I believe that Lee Harvey Oswald was working for the CIA, FBI, military intelligence, and the mob. You understand? Matter of fact, when JFK got killed, some people actually ran to the railroad track. It was this Texas, man. These folks, Texas, man, they got a different mindset, right? They actually ran to the railroad tracks to a boxcar where the three tramps were in. These people actually made a citizen's arrest of the so-called three tramps. There's a famous picture, JFK three tramps, right? One of them was identified as Hunt. He was a CIA operative who also was involved in the Watergate scandal. And Frank Sturgis was identified as one of the tramps, supposedly. A lot of people believe for some years that Woody Harrelson's daddy, who was a known mob hitman, was one of the tramps as well. But you had a group of brave people who made a citizen's arrest of these three tramps on a boxcar. Because they looked like tramps, but they had, they didn't have tramp shoes on. They had some good looking shoes on, and they supposed to have been tramps, right? So the people made a citizen's arrest and handed them over to the authorities, and the authorities let them go. So you had some people that was woke back in '63. They actually ran towards the grass, ran towards the railroad tracks. You look this up online, because there's so much stuff to that JFK stuff. It's crazy, man. That's a deep ass rabbit hole to go down. But I'm gonna let you know they did. And Lee Harvey Oswald never had a chance in court to defend himself because he was shot by Jack Ruby. And Jack Ruby, by the way, he worked for Richard Nixon back in the 40s. Jacob Rubenstein, or Rubenstein from Chicago, worked for Richard Nixon, Richard Milhouse Nixon, back in the 40s. There's a document from the 40s that names him. And it shows him connected to Richard Nixon among some other people. See how it works? So also with the RFK, Sirhan is the Palestinian American, has been in prison for 50 plus years, right? As the alleged killer of RFK. But according to witnesses, Sirhan was always in front of RFK. He was never behind RFK because the kill shot that killed RFK came from behind. He was shot from behind in the head. That would kill RFK. So who shot RFK? Some people believe it was his security guard, his security detail that killed him in that kitchen, or that shot him that led him dying later at the hospital. But Sirhan was not the one. He had a gun. They stopped him from shooting RFK. He injured some people. He shot up the room, but he didn't have enough bullets to just, what I'm saying? That's deep, right? So he's a patsy. Then Malcolm X, they caught that guy. They caught some guys. Now, these people believe that he was wrongfully imprisoned guy, the guy who was actually, he claimed himself to be one of the trigger people. He was just released recently, like a couple years ago. Maybe I think it was around the 50th anniversary of Malcolm X assassination. They released him from prison. A guy known by some instances as Thomas Hagen, and they released him. But he wrote an affidavit, I believe, or a confession saying that the guys who went to prison with him were not involved in killing Malcolm X, I believe. And I believe he named the folks who were involved. I'm not sure. But that stuff is tricky too. He was killed at the Audubon Ballroom, right? Malcolm X. I went to the Audubon Ballroom for Malcolm X's 90th birthday celebration. So I was actually in the room when he was shot. But the thing about it is, Malcolm normally his rallies were held by it'd be 36 police officers outside his rallies, right? Even though they was not checking people, even though his bodyguards were not checking people at the door for weapons, normally there'll be 36 policemen around his rallies, around his his events, and there were not 36 policemen around when that stuff was going down. Okay, Now, Dick Gregory said that the shots came from above, and people dispute that, but he said he had the autopsy results showed that there was a downward trajectory. The bullets was like going down into Malcolm, not up, because he was on the podium, right on the stage, and the shooters came out. The black shooters, as depicted in the Spike Lee movie, came from the crowd. Get your hands out my pocket, and they rushed towards the stadium, started shooting them up. But Dick claimed that the bullets came from above. Then somebody was there, his name, the ancestor now, brother Herman Ferguson, said he saw things flashing at the ceiling. So he thought there was gunshots, but then he thought, oh, maybe somebody was filming Malcolm X's assassination. People believe there was footage of Dr. King's assassination, that the U.S. military or the government filmed the whole assassination of Dr. King. So some people believe that Malcolm X assassination was also filmed on closed circuit television. Who knows? So who knows? But it was a lot of people at the Audubon. It was pandemonium when Malcolm got shot, right? Then you think about Malcolm X. The thing about Malcolm is that his top bodyguard. Now, people saying that the person who killed Nipsey was somebody he knew, somebody who allegedly was an informant for the police, and Nipsey didn't want to have any affiliation with this guy, but he knew who his killer was. I let the street talk about that. I let the news talk about who that guy is, and that's why people say, "Well, no, that ain't no government involvement because it's street stuff." It can still be government involvement. Y'all gotta think bigger because we don't know our value. That's the problem. We don't know who we really are. Like, this is the government that spied on Dr. King's family for three generations. They spied on Dr. King's family. They had spies at Morehouse when Dr. King was going to Morehouse. Dr. King went to Morehouse when he was about 15 years old. They had people going to Morehouse spying on Dr. King. Y'all always underestimate the power of who we are. The biggest threat to America's internal security is black unity. That's why the FBI neutralized Marcus Garvey. That's why a lot of our leaders get killed before they even turn 40 years old, let alone 30 years old. The government was watching Fred Hampton Sr., which is 14 years old. They wiretapped his phones in Maywood, Illinois, because he was such an effective organizer. He was able to organize several hundred young people in the NAACP Youth Council to protest segregation at the local swimming pool facility. At 14, he was doing that, right? So y'all keep on don't understand the situation because y'all think it's so unbelievable. It's unbelievable. It's not unbelievable. These folks go to art. That's why you think they had made laws back in the day. Do not teach these black folks how to read. They didn't get a cool. And now it's now they don't have to make no laws anymore because we don't read. We don't want a critical think about the situation. So Malcolm X's bodyguard, right, was Gene Roberts. Gene Roberts went NYPD undercover. I ain't talking about the TV show New York Undercover. I'm talking about he was NYPD undercover, part of the BOSSI program, the Bureau of Special Services and Investigations. This is the guy who called himself performing CPR on Malcolm X open mouth resuscitation while Malcolm X got holes in his chest. They shot up his chest, dude. How you gonna do CPR on Malcolm like that, dude? He got holes in his chest. Man, we not thinking. But this dude was Bureau of Special Services and Investigations. And he was Malcolm X's top bodyguard. Gene Roberts. He was the cat who set up Tupac's mom, Afeni Shakur, in that infamous or famous Panther 21 trial, where she had to represent herself in court while she was pregnant with Tupac. And she beat it. But he was the cat that was responsible for setting them up, as well as being Malcolm X's chief bodyguard. You see how it works. The person who was responsible for communication between Malcolm X and Elijah Muhammad was the National Secretary, John Ali, who was FBI. He was an FBI asset. That's John Ali. Even Malcolm talked about before he died how the Nation of Islam was very compromised by law enforcement. You can look this up. He says in his own words about how in the NOI he knew the nation has been compromised by law enforcement. So I don't know if he knew that John Ali was the FBI, but hey, there you go. This is a guy who was responsible for communication between Elijah Muhammad and Malcolm, and possibly helped escalate the schism between Malcolm and Elijah. Now, according to some sources, they say that when Malcolm made an infamous chicken coming home to roost statement about the Kennedy assassination, he was not told by the officials of NOI not to speak on the Kennedy assassination. Excuse me. I guess John Ali would have been the one responsible for relaying that information to Malcolm X. So I don't know. But if in hindsight, if you found John Ali was the FBI, it makes perfectly sense why he would try to not alert Malcolm so he could file a favor with Elijah Muhammad, because a lot of people saw that Malcolm was going to be the next in line, it seemed, to take over leadership of the nation. And a lot of them cats didn't want it. Because think about this. Malcolm founded Muhammad Speaks. He founded the newspaper for the Nation of Islam. Yet he was barely featured, if mentioned at all, in the paper that he founded for the Nation of Islam. That's crazy. So anyway, also, I brought up Fred Hampton Sr. His chief bodyguard was an FBI informant named William O'Neill. William O'Neill was the one who gave the floor plans to his handlers at the FBI of Fred Hampton's apartment. William O'Neill was the cat who fixed Fred Hampton's last meal. He probably put some stuff in Fred Hampton's food or Kool-Aid to make him extra drowsy, so he wouldn't wake up when the police started raiding his apartment on the west side of Chicago, right? Police came in Thursday. Like I said, FBI gave the floor plans to police, right? Police came, busted in the apartment on Thursday morning, right? 4:45 a.m. in the morning. Thursday morning, December 4th, 1969. Mark Clark, defense captain, was sleeping on the couch with the rifle in his possession. Police busted in, started shooting at the place, shot him, I believe, in the chest. As a reaction, he pulled the trigger on the rifle. And that was like the only shot that came from a Panther, because the news would later call it, in the state attorney's office, Edward Hannaran would later call it a shootout, when it was really a shoot-in, because that was the only bullet that was fired from a Panther was in response to Mark Clark getting hit in the chest, and then he died. So they started shooting up the place, and all the shots, people got injured. It was in the department, but all the shots seemed like they were trying to aim towards the bedroom where Fred Hampton was sleeping next to his pregnant fiance. His pregnant fiance. So she survived the encounter, but she heard them say that she's trying to wake Fred up. Fred was still drowsy from being drugged. I guess the brother did a Cardi B on him, but they thought he was going to make it. And then allegedly, I think it was a black police officer who was known for being hard on black folks, shot him in the head and said he won't live now. Something to that effect. So they basically carried his body out like it was a trophy. I mean, you can see the picture of the Chicago Police Department with Fred Hampton's body in a body bag. They smiling for the cameras. So the people thought that, the Panthers got in a shootout with the police. Then the truth came out because they didn't secure the apartment. And so the People's Law Office people and the people in the community and the Panthers started letting people come into the apartment to see what happened. You can see the bloody mattress of Fred Hampton. And the elder said it was like a northern lynching. It was like a northern lynching. And what people don't understand, Fred Hampton's mom used to babysit Emmett Till when he was a little kid. So this is what you're dealing with. This is what we're dealing with. So about 5,000 people came to Fred Hampton's funeral. And this dude named William O'Neill, who's also featured on Eyes on the Prize, that great award-winning, trailblazing, game-changing documentary series about the civil rights movement. He was featured in the Fred Hampton episode when they talked about the Chicago Panthers and Fred Hampton. And William O'Neill is interesting. It's like he's a likable guy. It's like he had a lot of remorse about what happened. And allegedly back on Sunday, January 14th, 1990, at the age of 40 years old, he committed suicide by running across the Eisenhower Expressway. He was hit by a car. Now, they say he tried to kill himself the previous September by running, across the expressway. He got hit by a car, but he wasn't hurt. And I believe his uncle, because he was there, his uncle said, I guess it was his uncle's home when he ran out both times. But the second time proved to be fatal. He was 40 years old. Allegedly, it was a suicide. I don't really know. But I'm going to read something from an article. I think it's from the Chicago Tribune. Not mistaken. About what happened to William O'Neal, the snitch who got Fred Hampton killed. But he should have felt bad because Fred Hampton was just 21 years old when he was taken out, y'all. He's just 21 years old. And it's sad. And it's really sad when you think about this mess. Let me read this. William O'Neal, ex-FBI informant, dies after being hit by a car. Panther informant death ruled suicide. Right. This is from the Chicago Tribune, January 18th, 1990. Robert Blau. The mysterious and once perilous life of William O'Neal, 40, a key federal government informant who infiltrated the Black Panthers in the late 1960s, ended in Maywood earlier this week when he was struck by a car on the Eisenhower Expressway, police said. The Cook County Medical Examiner's Office ruled O'Neal's death a suicide. O'Neal was living under the name of William Hart, at least the second pseudonym he had used in the last 17 years. He began a life of crime as a car thief on Chicago's West Side and then worked undercover for the FBI before being whisked into the Federal Witness Protection Program in 1973. That life, still shrouded in secrecy, ended when O'Neal apparently walked in front of a speeding car, officials said. With a husky voice and a sense of the theatrical, O'Neal was part moxie, part bravado, part con man, and one of the most extraordinary informants developed in Chicago by the FBI. O'Neal's death brought public and private expressions of shock from friends, relatives, and law enforcement officials. He was always a mysterious guy, one official who knew him well. He could play all the roles, every part the FBI agents, needed. I think he never got it out of his system and was confused. In 1984, O'Neal was living in California under an assumed name, but about 4 years ago, he moved back to the Chicago area. He made some attempts to contact acquaintances, but he kept mostly to himself, friends say. It was going good, said O'Neal's uncle, Ben Hurd of Maywood. I don't know what caused him to go off like that. O'Neal's wife, speaking through a family friend, said she believed her husband's death was accidental. She knows her husband loved her and loved their new son and was looking forward to life together, the friend said. Though the medical examiner's office had issued its ruling, an investigation is continuing. According to Dr. Robert Kirshner, Assistant Cook County Medical Examiner, on Monday evening, a second man who lived in the same apartment complex where O'Neal had been visiting before his death apparently committed suicide by running into the Eisenhower and was struck by a truck in virtually the same place as O'Neal. Kirshner said. Relatives said the two men did not know each other. For most of his adult life, O'Neal lived an existence that left him hated by some and highly praised by others. It all began in 1966 when FBI agent Roy Martin Mitchell tracked O'Neal down for stealing a car and driving it across state lines to Michigan. Mitchell agreed to forget about the stolen car charge if O'Neal would work for the FBI. His relationship with Mitchell was a study in contrast. Mitchell had a Southern background, wore a crew cut, and was a typical FBI man of the 1960s. O'Neill was a fast-talking, conniving West Side black kid who thought he knew all the angles. It's like the makers of a great Norman Lear produced TV show, right, y'all? That's me talking right there. O'Neill really carved his niche in Chicago history when he agreed to infiltrate the Black Panthers, then viewed as a violent radical group. And he helped convict Chicago Police Sergeant Stanley Robinson, who was accused of murdering drug dealers. O'Neill testified that he watched Robinson kill two men. After becoming accepted in the Panther Party, O'Neill served as the group's chief of security. Eventually, he supplied the floor plan to the West Side Panther Party headquarters that was the target of a controversial December 1969 pre-dawn raid in which Panther leaders Fred Hampton and Mark Clark were slain in a fusillade of law enforcement bullets. In a 1984 interview with the Tribune, apparently the last comments he made publicly, O'Neill acknowledged that he had thrived on the law enforcement work, was left thirsty when it finished, and believed that in the end he had been just a pawn in a very big game. Once again, he said he had been just a pawn in a very big game. He was a man of courage, says Gregory Adamski, an attorney who worked with O'Neill while O'Neill was in the government witness protection program. When he said he would do something, he would do it. Hurd and Adamski said O'Neill rarely spoke of his undercover years. Very seldom did he make anything of the past, Hurd said. He didn't like to talk about it. He evaded the questions. But on an upcoming episode of the public television series Eyes on the Prize, which is scheduled to be broadcast in Chicago next month, O'Neill discussed the ambivalence he felt about his actions. In the film, he said he felt very bad about his role in infiltrating the Panthers. He felt remorse about the deaths, but he felt the Panthers were a threat. He seems to have thought about himself as a law enforcement person, said a member of the series production staff. There was always some risk to him going on camera and doing this, the staff member said. He was very cautious about the interview. He said he had to be careful. Bill Hampton, brother of the slain Panther leader, speculated Wednesday that guilt over his role as an FBI informant sparked the suicide. The act of being an informant he committed was unjust and ignorant, Hampton said. It's something he tried to live with and couldn't. The end of his informant work left him restless, but without remorse. He said in 1984, if you ask me if the gains outweighed the losses, I think so. He said then, I think if I look back at myself, I say if I had ever met Mitchell, I say if I had never met Mitchell, I would probably be in jail or dead. If you ask me if I'm a happy man, I am not happy, no. I am not even content. 4 years ago, according to relatives and friends, O'Neill returned to the Chicago area. He and his first wife had parted when life in the witness protection program became too strained, one acquaintance recalled Wednesday. O'Neill had remarried in California and then moved back to the Chicago area with his wife. He is also survived by a 5-month-old son. Until recently, according to friends, he worked for an attorney in downtown Chicago. He was working for the lawyer up until 3 weeks ago, Hurd said. But he and the lawyer had a falling out about something. On Saturday, O'Neill went to his uncle's residence in Maywood, where he relaxed and watched television. On Sunday night, he kept going to the washroom, Hurd recalled. He stayed in there for a long time. The last time he came out, he tried to go out the window. I pulled him back, but he broke loose and ran toward the expressway. According to the Illinois State Police, O'Neill ran down the embankment near 5th Avenue, crossed the eastbound lanes, and was struck by a car in the westbound lanes. This was the second time his nephew had run onto the highway, Heard said. In September, O'Neal was struck by a car but not injured, Heard said. So this is from January 18th, 1990, Chicago Tribune. He killed himself on Sunday. He allegedly killed himself on Sunday, January 14th, 1990, by running across the Eisenhower Expressway, getting hit by a car. His son was 5 months old at the time. His son will be almost 30 years old. His son will be still in his 20s right now. I wonder how his son feels knowing that his father was this man that did the things he did. William Neal lived to be 40. Fred Hampton was killed at 21. Could you imagine if Fred Hampton was allowed to live to at least 40 years old, how different this world would look, how different Chicago would look? Obama probably would be no need for an Obama. He probably been the first black mayor of Chicago, not Harold Washington. See how it works? But it's crazy. But I had to read the whole thing. I don't even think they mentioned the name of Fred Hampton. Oh, they did. Hey, my bad. I think they did mention Fred Hampton's name. I was getting so overzealous about that. Excuse me. I believe they did mention Fred Hampton's name, but it's like, man, it is so sad, man. Man, his guilt killed him, if anything. He knew, because like, if you see the Eyes on the Prize, his segment, you could tell he had buyer's remorse about the whole thing. He felt bad about betraying Fred Hampton, because Fred Hampton was not a thug. He was a decent young man. He was a decent brother. I mean, he impressed. The SCLC was impressed. Dr. King's SCLC was impressed, very much impressed with Fred Hampton. Just 21 years old. Funeral, 5,000 people. Jesse Jackson was there, Ralph Abernathy. People love Fred Hampton. Decent people. Honest, good people love Fred Hampton. He worked with the gangs. Think about, they said Nipsey was going to reach out and work with the LAPD about the gang situation in LA, about, resolving that situation with the gangs, right? Fred Hampton was about politicizing the gangs, right? He was working with Jeff Fort, Black Peace Stone Nation, Jeff Fort of the L. Ruckins. Had the Students for the Democratic Society. That was the white gang. You had the Young Lords, this Puerto Rican Latino gang. He would work on everybody. He called them his Rainbow Coalition, street tribes. So, man, Nipsey Hussle was like Chairman Fred Hampton and our apprentice Bunchy Carter. He was this generation's almost like Fred Hampton and Bunchy Carter. And he was cut down before he could even get started, man. It's sad. That what hurts. That what hurt for me. The guy's like a decent brother, man. I never met the brother. I didn't really listen to his music like that. But he seemed like he was all right, man. To see the people love people, black people, brown people, even some white folks. People just hurt by his passing, man. You see how much it meant to his community. But it's nothing new. And y'all gotta also check out the church committee reports back in the 70s. You had Frank Church, the senator from Idaho, who exposed COINTELPRO about how the government was neutralizing its own citizens. That's through assassinations, through character assassinations, physical assassinations, all types of crazy stuff. So, yeah, it's not far-fetched that Nipsey could have been neutralized by the government. I mean, if you just look on the fact alone, he was involved in real estate. He was anti-gentrification. What I mean by gentrification is the removal of black folks from their environment, from their communities. He was against it. He was about buying up the block. So, it's not far-fetched to me that Nipsey could have been neutralized by what y'all consider a gang member who was compromised by the government. Like William O'Neal was a car thief who was took it in by the FBI and used as an informant, a snitch, whatever you want to call. He sent a cop killer. I mean, he sent a killer cop to jail. A cop to go around allegedly killing drug dealers in Chicago. And also he helped them kill a Black Panther, 2 Black Panthers. And matter of fact, the families of Mark Clark and Fred Hampton ended up winning in civil court. I think it was like the longest civil trial in history. It lasted for like 12 years. They got a settlement of nearly $2 million back in 1982, but no amount of money could bring back their loved ones. I believe to this day, Fred Hampton, who's folks from Louisiana, He's buried down in the family plot in Louisiana. They still use his tombstone as target practice down there. I mean, he's dead. It's like James Chaney, Mississippi Burning case. They still shoot at his tombstone and try to knock it over in Mississippi. You folks are crazy. I mean, I went to Jimmy Jackson, the guy who died connected to the Selma movement. It led to the Voting Rights Act of 1965, who died protecting his grandfather and his mom from a state trooper. I went to his cemetery where he's buried, and you could see bullet holes and stuff in his tombstone. So I mean, what is it about black men or hetero black men that this system fear? Now I think Nipsey was under attack recently about some statements that people try to make it like homophobic, but he was standing up for straight black pride. He was a proud hetero black male who loved black women. He loved the black family, from what I can get it. So if it wasn't the Dr. CB documentary, if he trying to heal the hood, you're trying to bring the gangs together like Fred Hampton, Bunchy Carter, politicized like Bunchy Carter and Fred Hampton, then we can look at the neighborhood angle. Him bound up the block, owning businesses, trying to create an economy in the hood. Let's talk about Homer G. Phillips then. That's another cat that don't really get mentioned about. Homer G. Phillips, right? There was the Homer G. Phillips Hospital in St. Louis, where at one point trained more doctors and nurses who were black than any place in the country. As a matter of fact, the guy who created Eyes on the Prize documentary series, Henry Hampton Jr., his father was the chief surgeon at Homer G. Phillips Hospital in St. Louis. And he, like me, he's also an alum of Washington University in St. Louis, the guy who created Eyes on the Prize. Matter of fact, his archives from his film production company is hosted at Washington University in St. Louis, which was a help. My mentor, the late, great Dean McLeod, was the vice chancellor of Washington University, and also he was director of the John B. Irvin Scholar Program. I was a John B. Irvin Scholar. He helped bring that important archive to Washington University. And so, yeah, that's another story. But let's talk about Homer G. Phillips, the man, and what happened to him, and how that could be related to what happened to Nipsey Hussle. And I think my job really is to bring that history element to these current events for you all. Like I said, y'all really enjoyed the Chicago, Chicago psyops, bigger than juicy fruit segment I did. So I guess this is my calling. But anyway, let's talk about Homer G. Phillips. And y'all can look up Homer G. Phillips. Homer G. Phillips was an interesting cat. He's from Sedalia, Missouri, or Missouri as I call it. Was educated at Howard University, with the Howard University Law School. And he stayed at the home of the great poet Paul Laurence Dunbar as he was going to Howard University. That's Paul Laurence Dunbar. We Wear the Mask, the brilliant poet who was the classmate of the Wright brothers. I believe the Wright brothers, the guys who invented the airplane, they dropped out of high school while Paul Laurence Dunbar graduated from high school, I believe. But he used to work with the Wright brothers. A lot of y'all don't know that. Just look that up. Take a look. It's all online. But he moved to St. Louis after graduating from law school, became a lawyer, a well-known lawyer in St. Louis. Homer G. Phillips did. He was a true people's champ and advocate. He actually brokered a deal with the city to get $1 million set aside to build a up-to-date black hospital for black people in St. Louis, right? They were going to this dog-out hospital facility. He negotiated a deal where the city would set aside $1 million to build a up-to-date and advanced hospital and put it in the black neighborhood known as DeVille. DeVille was a very powerful black neighborhood. Black business class people stayed there. And also Sumner High School, I believe, is in DeVille. That was the first black high school west of the Mississippi, named after the abolitionist Senator Charles Sumner of Massachusetts, who was beat to an inch of his life on the floors of Congress right before the Civil War by a South Carolina representative named Preston Brooks. Preston Brooks beat him with his cane made out of some heavy wood that almost killed this man. He had to convalesce for a couple years before he came out to Congress. But Charles Sumner was an advocate of the abolition of slavery. And Charles Sumner High School was named for him. It was the first black high school west of the Mississippi River. Y'all know Bobby Dick Gregory is a graduate of Sumner High School along with Chuck Berry and Arthur Ashe. So they produced some prominent people from this high school. So in 1931, unfortunately, January 18, 1931, as he was waiting for his streetcar to take him to his downtown office, Homer G. Phillips was assassinated by two black men, two young black guys. Shot him, they beat him up, and they shot him to death. And his funeral was attended by thousands of people. The aldermen of the city quickly named the hospital they was going to build for black people, the Advanced Hospital. They named it after Homer G. Phillips. Right? They named it after him. So people say it was two black men who killed Homer G. Phillips. Let me just talk about that angle and how it could be, well, like Malcolm X's case. They used black people to do the deed, but who were the mastermind behind the assassination? Look at Malcolm right quick. Let me go to Malcolm. People say that the nation did it. You had people who were members of the Nation of Islam that was involved, but were they the masterminds behind the whole thing? Because could the Nation of Islam deny Malcolm X's entry into France right before he was assassinated? Do the Nation of Islam got that type of power to do that? Officials in France were told, do not let Malcolm into France because we're going to assassinate. Who was going to assassinate Malcolm? Malcolm feared for his life, was in danger. I think he notified the State Department 2 weeks before that his life was in danger. James Farmer, who visited the White House after the assassination of Malcolm X, was asked by the president, has anybody ever found out who killed that Malcolm fellow? Anything on the Malcolm fellow? Like James Farmer believed he was killed because Malcolm X was bad for the drug trade. He was messing up the French Connection. He was cleaning up the neighborhood. And the mafia wanted him out the way. You know, a lot of people know that Malcolm was friends with Bumpy Johnson, the legendary Harlem gangster. And I think Bumpy Johnson offered Malcolm some protection. According to his lieutenants, he was offered protection by Bumpy Johnson. You know, it's like, we don't know our history, man. Because, you know, when he was Detroit Red, you know, he was running around with Red Fox. I believe Red Fox was known as St. Louis Red. They actually worked at the same place, Jimmy's Chicken Shack in Harlem, washing dishes. This is the same place where Charlie Parker used to work at. You know, Bird loved chicken, right? He was washing dishes at one point, listening to Attn play piano at Jimmy's Chicken Shack, right? So, you know, Malcolm's collaborator, DePinto, the Kenyan freedom fighter of Indian persuasion, was killed a couple of days later in front of his daughter. You know, on February 25th, I believe, 1965. Either February 24th or February 25th, they killed DePinto in Kenya. And Malcolm was killed in front of his family. And I already tell you all the stuff, how it's government related. So, getting back to Homer G. Phillips, his murder is still unsolved. It happened January 18th, 1931, and it is still unsolved to this day. But I want to give y'all a little tidbit to see how they play the games, right? I'm going to read from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Y'all can look this up online. Everything I'll show y'all, y'all can look this up online. Homer G. Phillips was well respected. Like, he was a black Republican. He was so well respected among blacks and whites that the mayors of St. Louis would often consult him for leadership advice. And he was the one, you know, like I said, put the hospital, instead of putting it downtown next to the White Hospital, put the new hospital that's named after him in the black neighborhood, in the Ville neighborhood. But let me read from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. On the morning of June 18th, 1931, Phillips left his home at 1121 Albert Avenue near Fountain Park and walked to Delmar Boulevard to catch a streetcar downtown. Two men approached him as he leaned on a windowsill, reading a newspaper. One man slugged Phillips, punched him, and one or both of them opened fire. They fled north in an alley as Phillips, 51, died on the sidewalk. Police quickly suspected the family of the late George Fitzhugh, whose estate Phillips had protected for Fitzhugh's daughter from a counterclaim. The family had objected to Phillips' fee, and one relative made public threats after Phillips refused to release the settlement from escrow. Police arrested Fitzhugh's grandson, George McFarland, 18, and McFarland's friend, Augustus Brooks, 19, and charged them with murder. Thousands packed St. Paul's AME Church, then at Leffingwell and Lawton Avenues, for Phillips' funeral. The Board of Aldermen voted quickly to name the new black hospital in his memory. In separate trials in 1932, McFarland and Brooks were acquitted. One witness couldn't be found. Another had suffered a mental breakdown. The case remains unsolved. Homer G. Phillips Hospital opened in 1937 and closed in 1979, now serves as a senior housing center. I mean, how we know there was some black beef that killed Homer G. Phillips? Homer G. Phillips was a very influential black man in the city of St. Louis. He was considered one of the black leaders of St. Louis. He made a lot of powerful enemies, both black and white. I mean, success will bring out enemies. What Malcolm said, without criticism, you won't have success. Homer G. Phillips was an advocate of the people. He surely made a lot of powerful enemies, both black and white. But that because it was black guys who did it, allegedly, does not mean they were the black mastermind behind it, or it was a black mastermind behind it. People always look at the shooter, forget about the shooter sometimes. Who benefits from the removal of the king? That's some Shakespearean stuff. Who benefits from the removal of the king? The shooter is just a pawn a lot of times. But who benefits when the king is removed or neutralized? That is the question. Most murders remain unsolved, especially if you're a person who could be considered a very polarizing figure or a very controversial figure. You can have a long list of enemies who want to see you dead. Just like with Kennedy. People say, well, the mob did it, the CIA did it, the FBI did it. They all did it. You know what I'm saying? As far as I'm concerned, it was allowed to happen by the system. The system eats its own. The system allows for purges every now and then. Wars are nothing but big blood sacrifices for the system. Think about it. I'm not telling you how to think. I'm just trying to get you to think. See how it works? So this man did not even get a chance to see his hospital built that was named in his honor. But he was a visionary. He put his life on the line for his people. And that's what we call people revolutionary suicide. What Huey P. Newton coined, revolutionary suicide. Nipsey Hussle, revolutionary suicide. Fred Hampton, revolutionary suicide. Malcolm, Martin, Medgar, revolutionary suicide. But I named all these people, with the exception of Homer G. Phillips, all these kids could not make it out of their 30s, let alone Fred Hampton could not even crack 30 years old, let alone 25 years old. So there's a war on the black man in this system. On the hetero black man, look at Me Too, we the boogeyman for all society ills. So black men, stand up. Sisters, stand with the black man. Be an advocate, be an ally, don't be an enemy. Last tweet from Nipsey the Great was, it's a blessing to have strong enemies. Man, it is a blessing to have strong enemies because at least you know where you stand with your enemies. Your enemies will inspire you to greatness. Your enemies will reveal to you who you really are and what you are made of. You understand what I'm saying? So I'm giving y'all all this information. I'm not doing gossipy stuff. I'm giving y'all stuff y'all can research. That's my gift to you all. Y'all probably never heard of Homer G. Phillips. Y'all probably never heard of Bunchy Carter. But y'all can look all these people up. The ancestors never left us. They never left us. They always with us. They riding with us. Nipsey is an ancestor. He's a righteous ancestor. He's riding with us now. We got to ride for him, but ride for all of us. Let's bring it back to us, y'all. It's our time. Reclaim the narrative. So if you like the words that you heard from Brother Herd, please spread the word. Subscribe to the channel. We All Be TV on YouTube. Support the movement. Go make a recurring or one-time payment through PayPal or Google Pay. Just look me up with my email, r2c2h2@gmail.com. Once again, that's r2c2h2@gmail.com. You can also find me on Cash App. Handle on Cash App is R2C2H2. Once again, handle on Cash App is R2C2H2. You can buy Artivist art at www.r2c2h2.com. Once again, that's r2c2h2.com. Check money order for a donation can be made payable to the We All Be Group Incorporated, P.O. Box 752-062, Memphis, Tennessee 38175. Once again, that's P.O. Box 752-062, Memphis, Tennessee 38175. Find us on Instagram, R2C2H2, Twitter at WeAllBe, Facebook, facebook.com/R2C2H2. Thank you once again, family, for listening. Appreciate your feedback. Thank you so much for your love and support and encouragement. In the words of the great Duke Ellington, we love you madly. Keep on producing and pushing.